Hi friends, it's Kayla. This is going to be a kind of mashup of two different things. So every 3 months I do a quarterly update where I tell you, or I give you stats about the last 3 months of reading. But this time, since I didn't do a May or June wrap up, I am going to actually go through every title and tell you the star rating I gave it, and then focus on the ones that had the biggest impact on me or that were my favorites. Usually in my quarterly updates, I give you 5 of my favorite things, but this time, since I didn't get to talk about, or I didn't take the time to talk about all of these books, I'm gonna mention more like 10. I haven't actually planned which ones, but I think 10 is like our goal number. So behind me is everything that I read in April, May, and June. There are, hold on, let me pull up my notes, 42 books that I read in the last 3 months. For statistics, star ratings I gave out, I gave 13 5 stars. Actually, hold on, let me move this again so I don't have to move. I gave out 13 5 stars, 11 4 stars, 13 3 stars, 4 2 stars, and 1 1 star. So I read a lot of books that I felt average about, but I also read a lot of books that I really enjoyed. And then another stat is I read 16 adult books, 22 young adult books, and 4 middle grade books. And then for genres, my highest amount is 19 SFF books. This includes like anything speculative, a little bit of magic, a lot of magic, future, space, like it encompasses a lot of things. And then the next highest one is contemporary, then 6 thrillers, 5 nonfiction. That's what happened in the last 3 months. Now I guess we'll go through them all. Is this gonna get boring? I don't know. Okay, I think I have it all organized. I did do a wrap up for April, so I've already talked about all of these ones at length. And all of these books, none of them are making it into my like top 10 memorable picks from the last 3 months. I think even in my wrap I told you about how I just wasn't feeling passionate about anything in general, and even some of my ratings were more objective. So you might be surprised that Gemini isn't making it into the top of my quarterly thing, but like, I don't know. I think I need to read it again. Getting into books I read in May and June. We'll just run through them. Here's some nonfiction I read. Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. I gave 5 stars. Most nonfiction I end up giving 5 stars. A Bound Woman is a Dangerous Thing by Damaris B. Hill. I gave 4 stars. Body Talk, edited by Kelly Jensen, I also gave 4 stars. So I just contradicted myself that I give everything 5 stars. Hood Feminism, though, by Mickey Kendall, definitely got 5 stars. And then I only read 1 anthology in the last couple months. Well, unless you consider Body Talk and Anthology. Some of it, most of it's nonfiction. Okay. A Fiction Anthology was a Phoenix First Must Burn, edited by Patrice Caldwell, and this I gave 4.5 stars. You all know my feelings about anthologies and that I never give them 5 stars because like how? There's too many stories. One goes wrong and it could ruin the entire book. I can't think of anything in here that I didn't not like. Why didn't I mark my favorites? I think I've only given like 2 anthologies ever 5 stars. This one was really good. Gilded by Elizabeth Acevedo is one of my favorite short stories I've ever read. I remember really liking Rebecca Roanhorse. Sometimes anthologies like introduce me to new authors that I end up loving, but this one, most of the authors that I've read before ended up being my favorite stories in here. I really liked L.L. McKinney's story. Oh, and I loved E.B. Boys. I think E.B. Boys is my second favorite. I also read a couple middle grades. Ghost Squad by Claribel A. Ortega, I gave 5 stars. And King and the Dragonflies by Case and Calendar, I also gave 5 stars. I reread The Selection in the last couple months, which is a situation I regret a little bit because, well, it's a good thing because I now know that like it was a circumstantial 5 stars originally, because second time around it was 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars. I also read a couple mediocre mystery thrillers. So The Poison Garden by Alex Marwood, I gave 2 stars. The Girl from Widow Hills by Megan Miranda, I gave 3 stars. Fragments of the Lost by Megan Miranda, I gave 3 stars. And then The Guest List by Lucy Foley was my favorite thriller I read, and I gave it 4 stars. I will be talking about these 2 in a live for my book club. I still don't know when, but I will try my best to make that timely and announce it to you. And then Abnormal for me is my favorite books from this quarter were contemporary, when usually my favorites are the ones that are a little science fiction, a little fantasy. But all of the things that I read that were fantasy in some way, like none of them got 5 stars. I still really enjoyed a lot of these, but I'll just run through the ratings. The Deep by River Solomon, Anne Devey Diggs, William Hudson, and Jonathan Snipes got 4 stars. Of Curses and Kisses by Sandy Menon got 3 stars. When We Were Magic by Sarah Gailey got 3 stars. Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey got 4 stars. The Fascinators by Andrew Eliopoulos got 3 stars. Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas got 4 stars. Rebel Heart by Moira Young got 4 stars. And Mayhem by Estelle Lore got 4 stars. And then my contemporary stack is almost all 5 stars, which I love. But the ones that weren't are The Raven King by Nora Sakovic, which was a 3 star, I think. I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Julie Siegel and Kimberly Jones was 3 stars. And then all of these were 5 stars. And some of my favorite books that I'll talk to you more about. The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum, 5 stars. The Henna Wars by Adiba Jagudar, 5 stars. Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. Do I need to keep saying 5 stars? You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. Stay Gold by Tobley McSmith. And Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. Now to figure out my top 10. Okay, so I actually have more like 15 books to cover, which will please the people who wanted like a full 30 book reviews in one video type of video. I'm going to start with Hood Feminism because this is a book that I most recommend of all the things that I read and all the things that I'm talking about. I originally heard about this from Ashley at Bookish Realm, who I will link down below. It's kind of a direct response to the idea of white feminism and how damaging that is to marginalized communities. If you don't know what white feminism means, I mean, here's a great book that will cover it. I really think this is just a perfect book. Like, there's no other way to put it. My favorite portions of this, I started at the very end because I wanted to read up on allies, anger, and accomplices and the difference between them and how you can be an ally to the Black community and what it actually means to be an ally versus an accomplice. And I just thought that was extremely powerful. Again, at the end, there's a section on parenting, and I specifically would love Mickey to write another book just on parenting because it was so good. I ran out of sticky notes, and so I ended up highlighting a lot of this book, which might upset you. But it talked about financial stability, neglect. I think my favorite quote from this entire book is, "It's easy to say that only love matters," which is referring to like foster care and adoption and caring for children, "when you assume that a culture has no value and that erasing a child's connection to it isn't damaging," which maybe out of context doesn't have the impact that it did on me. But the chapters are so well organized. It talks about different phrases that are damaging, like "you're pretty for a Black girl." My other favorite section, it appears with all of my highlighting, is "It's Raining Patriarchy." It talks about the phrase "fast-tailed girls." It talks about gun violence, poverty, missing and murdered women. It talks about code switching, and I really just think that how do I put this? Based on a lot of book reviews that I see from the white community on BookTube and Goodreads and everywhere else, I think there's a lot of things that you may not realize are hurtful or microaggressions or racist that this could teach you a lot. I really think that this is like a flawless book. So that was my favorite nonfiction that I read. Another one I definitely want to feature because, I mean, it got 4 stars and it was sent to me, and I definitely want to make sure that I take the opportunity to talk about the arcs that were sent to me. This whole series of books are just so good, and I highly recommend if you are a teen or you know teens. I just think these are really essential, like, first introductions to feminism, intersectionality. This one, Don't Call Me Crazy, is all about mental health, and then this newest one that's out in August is all about bodies, and it talks from so many different perspectives. We have all of these different authors in here from so many different experiences. It talks about disability, it talks about cancer, it talks about fatness, it talks about gender and sexuality, it talks about scars, it talks about acne. It definitely isn't an all-encompassing book, but I think all of these different perspectives and personal stories can be impactful to a different group of people, or just to everybody who just wants more knowledge about like general body positivity. We have representation for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, for chronic pain, and they're always in such different ways. Like, some of them are essays, some of them are infographics, some of them are comics. There's beautiful imagery. The final copy is going to be in full color. There's Q&As, there's like interviews. It's just a really kind of fun thing to flip through as well. Also, what I love about these in general is that like some of these are unique stories and essays, and some of them are pulled from other things, so it's just really well curated collections. The 2 slightly magical books that I ended up liking the most were also arcs sent to me. So Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, and I will be passing this one specifically along to another reviewer, because obviously I cannot speak on representation, and it being sent to me, I am thankful for, solicited or otherwise, but I feel it my responsibility to pass it along to someone else. This doesn't come out until, it says June here, but I feel like this isn't actually out until August. I'll also go ahead and link down below some Own Voices reviews of this book, because that's important. But this story follows Yadriel, who is a brujo, but his family doesn't accept his gender and fully support him completing this ritual. So he ends up doing it himself with the help of his friend, who's just a cinnamon bun and my favorite character. One of my favorite characters I read this entire quarter. His job is to help guide spirits into the afterlife, but he accidentally like brings back a boy from school, and they have a great dynamic. They're both sweet and funny and sarcastic. It's got a really good mix of like paranormal, but then romance, but then mystery. And I think it has amazing commentary on like gender and sexuality, gender dysphoria, acceptance. And overall, it was really like an immersive story and very cinematic. I could see this as a movie. For me, what lost a star was the overall pacing. I just got a little lost and wish that we had spent more time in different sections. And I don't know, like, it's not a negative thing that I needed this book to be 50 more pages. Just the wrapping up at the end, I just wasn't completely satisfied. Highly recommend though. The other one is Mayhem by Estelle Lore, which is probably one of the most memorable books that I read this quarter. And the first half of this, I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be one of my new favorite books of all time. I cannot wait to recommend it to everybody who like loves The Astonishing Color of After and Summer of Salt and all of these slow, magical, like small town, weird books. And then I don't really know what happened in the latter half. I still gave it 4 stars, but like this was 5 stars, this was 3 stars. Basically, we're following a girl named Mayhem who goes back to the town that her mother is from. There's this family history that's a little magical. Her and her mother have like ran away from her stepfather, who was abusing them. And in this small town, she discovers her family history. There are like letters from other family members, and how much of it gets described. Okay, yeah, there's magic, and there's also a mystery because there's this person like kidnapping girls from the beach, and her newfound like powers she wants to use for good. But sometimes magic is a desperate, all-consuming thing that can make things dangerous for her and the other people involved. So it's said to be a mix between The Lost Boys and The Craft. Its setting is like in the 80s. It's got a very slow, like ominous vibe that I love. Water and the beach is a central focus. It just lost me in the second half. I guess just the pacing again, like perfect, too fast. So thank you so much to the publishers or authors that sent those my way, even if they weren't like perfect books. I'm glad that I still can recommend all the arcs that I got with confidence. I would also again like to mention these two books, but I will be talking about them more in depth in future videos. This one in a live and this one in a vlog. They both got 4 stars, so they're still on my recommended list. I'm just going to take the opportunity to talk about them more in future things. But now we can get into my like all-time favorite 7 things that at this point would all end up in my favorites of the year, and I don't know how I'm going to figure out how to actually curate that list. I have 6 months to figure it out. I am so thrilled that both of Case and Calendar's books got 5 stars because I read Hurricane Child years ago and said back then, I was like, this is so special. I think Case and Calendar is a new favorite author. Oh my god, I can't wait to see what else they write. So this one is a middle grade, King and the Dragonflies, which follows King and his brother has passed away, so we're dealing with grief. This very much reminds me of The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan. Just the idea, the themes, the overarching like references and metaphors. He believes his brother has turned into a dragonfly, and he's committed to like finding out the truth. At the same time, his brother did not make him feel especially comfortable being himself, and said a couple things that makes him question his friendships and question his sexuality and feeling comfortable being gay. He has this one friend named Sandy who goes missing in the book, and he's basically the only one who can figure out the truth. His dynamic and his friendship with this other boy is so real and painful and beautiful all at the same time, and King discovering the truth about himself and that he doesn't have too many intersections, that he can be all of these things and be proud. And the arc that he takes and his family takes is just so desperately important, and this is one of my most recommended middle grades like of all time. And then Felix Ever After is one of the most dynamic, complex queer YAs I've ever read, and I'm so glad. Felix is a trans boy and very confident in his identity, and then also questioning throughout the entirety of the book like how he truly identifies. He's never been in love before. He doesn't know how to have a successful relationship, and everything is so messy with his friendships and his relationships. Everything is so imperfect, and I was like so desperately emotionally impacted by Felix's choices that I was yelling at him while reading the book. Like, he would make the worst decisions and everything was so messed up because of how he would choose to communicate or the choices that he made, and I just couldn't stand it. It was incredible. He basically ends up catfishing a classmate. He's dealing with some really intense transphobic messages from people and dead naming. So Felix wants revenge, and the way that he goes about it is stressful. Where the story goes is stressful. The choices that Case and Calendar made for this love triangle was stressful, and I loved every single second of it. I didn't agree with so many things, but the fact that this elicited such an emotional response from me just goes to show like how good and complex identity can be. And like, Case and Calendar is my new favorite author of all time. Both of those are going to end up in my favorites of the year. Like, how could they not? Next up, we have The Henna Wars by Adiba Jaguar, which I want to acknowledge. I am so sorry that I kept referring to this as middle grade. It's not. The characters are 16. I don't know how I got it in my head that it was middle grade, or maybe just one person mentioned it and I kept thinking that was true. But this is just like a beautiful high school sapphic female romance. Our main character in a shot is Bengali. She's living in Ireland, and there is a girl at the school who's like a friend, but not really, and now kind of a rival, because they both have to start businesses in a certain class at school, and it's like a competition, and they both decide to do henna businesses, even though the other girl, it's not like part of her family or history or culture. And so Nishat feels validly like something has been taken from her. There's conversations of cultural appropriation. She's also dealing with homophobia and people talking about her, and it's her coming out story, and it's so painful, but it's also just like a really hope-filled story, and it's lovely and beautiful, and her friendships are so good and so real and authentic, and their romance is like one of my favorites that I've ever read. The actual final cover is beautiful, so I appreciate being sent the ARC. I will be passing this one along as well, even though I don't want to part with it yet, but I will. It's so beautiful, the story. Oh my god, I need to read it again. Another favorite is Stay Gold by Tobley McSmith. I think I said Tobley earlier, I'm sorry. Oof, this book did a lot to hurt me. For all of these, I will try to link to some like Own Voices reviews. Obviously that is more important than mine, because I know this book means a lot to a lot of people. This was probably the heaviest book that I read for the Queer Lit Readathon, in which I read like 10 books and I extended it to be like the entire month. It's a really hard read, especially at the end. A lot of these books could be triggering, so like if you need to look up trigger warnings, you already know that about yourself. But this one, especially just with like how light and rom-com-y it looks, and it is, I think could be extremely triggering. So this is about a trans boy named Pony, and he's starting in a new school and he's going stealth. His goal is to just be under the radar. There's a girl named Georgia who is a cheerleader, and she is going through her own stuff, and they come together and they have this really it's a really great slow burn build to a very difficult outing situation. I think at some point I'm gonna need to do an entire like spoiler discussion of this book, because the synopsis gives you very little of their actual journey, but I feel like it's so important to discuss what happens in here. And Georgia's, I hated Georgia. I didn't want to root for Georgia. Georgia made me so angry, and there are so many things that like I wish didn't have to be the focus of this book, but I know are so important to stories. I just loved this book so much, and I feel such joy thinking about more opportunities for trans authors and trans stories to be told in the future. I don't know, I just have a lot of feelings. Next up is The Wicker King by Kay Ancrum, my other favorite author of the year. I should save this for my mid-year freakout and discuss it then, but like, Kay Ancrum is everything. Thank you to Fadwa for bringing my attention to this author, because like, I can't even stand it. It's all so good. So The Wicker King is this relationship between August and Jack, and Jack is experiencing hallucinations, and August gets sucked into this world where he's willing to do anything that Jack needs from him to continue their friendship and their relationship. It's very codependent. They're both in very difficult circumstances with their families and with their lives, and their relationship is so like one of the best I've ever read. And the focus put on like physical and mental illness is so powerful. This reading experience and the way it was told and the way we descend into Jack and August's psyches, it's like we're in this fantasy world, but we're not. It's just real life, and it's beautiful, and it's hard, and I could cry now. Okay, I think the last that I'm going to mention is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson, because this is the just most joy-filled story I think I read. I don't seek out books with the goal of feeling happy. Like, I don't read many books that you could put into a box that's just like happy, solely happy. I like books that hurt me, and this is no different. Our main character Liz is going through some difficult stuff: homophobia, racism, microaggression, and more like overt aggression, but at the same time it does have that like joy-filled romance and a hope-filled narrative. Basically, Liz is set up for success. She is confident and smart and is on a great path to succeed at everything she could ever want, but she is stunted financially, and in order to go to college and become a doctor and all of these things, one of her only options is to try to be prom queen, where prom king and queen will get scholarships. While doing that, she meets another girl named Mac, who is also up for prom queen and has like a family legacy that's really fun, and their dynamic is again just like soft cinnamon bun wonderfulness. I think this book did the absolute perfect balance of friendship, family, difficult things, relationships, school time, like extracurricular activities. This was a perfectly paced book. There were some really powerful quotes. One of them I put on my Instagram because it just like summed up Liz's entire feelings about how the school is treating her and not taking things seriously. This is it. It says right here, it's a swoon-worthy romance, and I completely agree. I'm not often looking for like beautiful, fluffy things, but I needed it last month and I got it. I think those are all my favorites. There are some other 5 stars that I gave out, or like 4 stars. Clap and You Land is so good. A Phoenix First Must Burn is so good. Ghost Squad is so good. But those were my standout reads from the last quarter, the ones that I highly recommend in general. I recommend everything. Someone will get something out of something. And that is my stats and all of my ratings that I missed and all of my favorite things. Let me know if you're planning to read anything that I mentioned, if you already have, what you thought of them, and I will see you later. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.